Welcome again to the Richard and Judy Book Club, exclusively with WHSmith. And let me just read 4 one-word reviews of this book off the front cover. Superb, thrilling, inspirational and magnificent. All national newspaper titles referring to Gold by Cleave. Now, the thing about the kind of novel writing that Chris does is that you have to have a sense of timing, because he writes very much in the present moment, in the present day. All his novels are set in very, very contemporary frames. And boy, did you get this one right. Because Gold, as the title implies, is set in, well, in 3 Olympics, but essentially in the London Olympics of this past year. And it's set in the velodrome. It's the cyclist's story. Did you know, when you decided to write this story, and we'll come on to the details in a second, how successful Britain's cyclists were going to be this time?
I had an inkling of it, and of course they did really well in Beijing, and we knew that they'd carried on that programme. I knew that the Olympics was going to be a big thing. You know, it's the greatest story on earth coming to my home city.
Because you're from London, aren't you?
Yeah. So I wanted to cover it, and that was the starting point of the book. I thought I wanted to mark that moment, because, as you say, my stuff is about how it feels to live now in Britain. They're very British novels about the excitement and the fun.
But it was actually astonishing, wasn't it, what happened at the London Olympics this year? I mean, there were lots of sort of gainsayers that right up until the whole thing started, people were predicting doom and disaster and God knows what. And in the event, it was just absolutely amazing, and the kind of atmosphere that surrounded the whole country was just fascinating. Why did you concentrate on cyclists? The
beauty of the sport. The first time I walked into a velodrome, all of the hairs went up on the back of my neck. It's such a beautiful architectural space. Even if you didn't know what happened there, you'd think,
the elliptical, sloping.
That just comes back to itself always. Yeah, these big, gorgeous banked curves and the lovely wooden arcs of it. If you just walked in, you'd think, oh, the artist has done a great job here. And then you realise that people are allowed to race around this thing as fast as they can, and indeed if they're not going fast enough, they'll fall off. You know, it's a beautiful sport.
There are kind of twin themes in this book. It's essentially it's about 2 women who are both cyclists, Olympians, great rivals and great friends at the same time, and one of them has to step back from the sport. It almost breaks her heart because she gets pregnant and she has a baby, and the baby turns out to have leukemia. So it looks at that aspect of life, but also at this extraordinary competitiveness that drives people at this very, very top level. You research the sport in great detail. Can you analyse for us what it is about the Victoria Pendletons of this world which drives them to the achievements that they succeed in?
Well, I met 2 kinds of athletes while I was researching the book. There are people who are very motivated by success, people who absolutely love it, who light up when they win, who are completely full of sunshine, and someone who I didn't meet during it, but who I think exemplifies that, is someone like Jessica Ennis. She just bounds onto every stage and is clearly loving it. Then I've met other athletes who are more motivated by the avoidance of failure. Right? and they tend to have in their past something pretty dark, you know, something that happened to them, something that they don't want to happen again. There'll often be a figure in their lives who's pivotal in terms of their development, for better or for worse. And without naming names, I spoke with some athletes who are terrified of failure more than they're enjoying success.
Really? That's a horrible way to live, isn't it?
I don't know if it's unique to athletes, though.
No.
I mean, one of the things that I loved about researching these lives was because you're talking about how much do you want to succeed in your field versus how much balance and joy and comfort do you want in your life. It's a question that all of us have. It's framed in various different ways, you know, professional versus family life or work-life balance. I'm interested in taking these everyday questions that we all face and pushing them to an extreme. And it doesn't get more extreme than the life of an Olympian, because it's pretty much the most extreme job I could imagine. It's necessary for everybody else in the world to fail in order for you to succeed.
Yes, absolutely. That's very well put.
I know you did quite a lot of cycling yourself with some top athletes as part of your research for this, which must have been exhausting.
You did 22 hours a week?
I did for a while. I mean, I made myself ill in the end.
Did you?
I went into it with a lot of hubris. I thought to myself, well, if I can't No, I certainly won't be as quick as these Olympians. I'll never get that fast, but there's no reason why I can't put myself through the same intensity of training to see what the effects are on body and mind. And the and is that I destroyed myself. It took about 3 months.
A broken man.
After the
He's
first...
only 15, you know, this guy.
Yeah, aged very quickly after the first month.
Presumably, I mean, you talk about the difference between Olympians and just good athletes. Presumably Olympians, to a certain extent, they must be born.
What, genetically?
Genetically. There must be that strong genetic element that pushes them way beyond anyone else.
Yeah. That was the very first thing I learned. The difference between... well, the difference in people's ability to turn oxygen and food into raw speed is much greater than the difference, for example, in people's heights.
Right.
You know, and that's a natural thing that we're born with. And, and you can train that a little, and at the very high level, you can train it a lot.
Right.
But you're competing against other people who are born with superpowers.
So you found when you were doing your training to try and discover the frame of mind necessary to make these achievements that you plateaued quite quickly. There was genuinely a concrete ceiling that no matter what training you did, what food you ingested, what high-powered drinks you took, you were never going to get beyond that. But a genetically born to succeed Olympian has got that much more room to go up. Yeah.
It's a really nice metaphor. I mean,
well, it's yours. It's in the back of the book. It's in the question and answers that we sent to you.
I think imagine a 10-story building. You know, I could train as hard as I liked. You know, and that would make the difference between getting to the 2nd and 3rd floor. Whereas an Olympian, like someone like a Victoria Pendleton or a Jessica Ennis, you know, they're born on the 8th floor and their struggle is to get to the 10th.
Yes. Yeah. The other research that you did in great depth was just because you needed to know what it's like to have a child who's got a serious disease like leukemia. You spent a lot of time at Great Ormond Street, didn't you?
Yeah, and that was the most interesting as well as the most harrowing research I've done for any of my books. It was very unexpected.
What do you mean?
Well, I'd expected it to be very mournful and sad, and I'd expected a lot of misery, and there is that, but it was also the most joyful place I'd ever been. And in a time, I think, where we're surrounded by these stories of our national institutions disappointing us, actually this was a place that the longer I spent there, the more I fell in love with it, the more it was inspiring, the more I understood that the work that the doctors and the nurses are doing there is world class. The parents, there's something about the atmosphere of that place that brings something out of them. And it's a place where human emotion is experienced at the extreme. Right? So again, for my purposes, these are the stories I like to tell. It's where ordinary humans, with the love that they have for the people in their lives, are put in these extreme corners and asked these very difficult questions that life sometimes asks us. Okay, what will you choose?
Well, you write about it beautifully, those extremes of emotions and those extremes of physical achievement, really extraordinary.
And the actual sort of bursts and flashes of activity in the Olympic stadiums that you write about here are as exciting as watching it on the telly was this summer. I mean, you really do capture the moment beautifully. I mean, you really literally made my heart beat faster at moments.
But not enough to get on a bike.
Pardon? I do get on my bike, thank you very much. I just don't push towards the ceiling in the way that some people do. Anyway, it's a wonderful book. Many congratulations, and justly has earned some wonderful reviews from people other than us. It's gold. This is Chris Cleave, and if you buy it from WHSmith's, you will find in the back of the book, as with all of the books in this particular series, all sorts of extra content. There's the question and answer session I was mentioning. There's details of how to download podcasts, the app that you can take into a shop, and Judy and I'll talk to you on your mobile phone or on your tablet. It's all in here if you get it from WHSmith, but of course you can get it from wherever the heck you like. Gold, Chris Cleave, many congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Congratulations, great book. Thank you, Chris.